set up for Crew 2's arrival and welcome the Crew 2 crew.
That's right. He's been lucky enough to have his own bedroom. I think they might have done rock, paper, scissors. I'm not exactly sure how they had it, but Commander Mike Hopkins actually has been sleeping in Crew Dragon Resilience during his stay aboard the International Space Station. Dragon Resilience and Crew Dragon Endeavor will be sleep stations for some of the crew that are coming up now. I believe Hopkins will continue to sleep in Crew Dragon Resilience, and I'm not sure who's going to do the rock, paper, scissors or whatever game they were playing earlier, the one from Tomas' childhood. That was so fun to find out. But they'll probably play a game to see who's going to sleep in Endeavor for the time being. In the meantime, Victor Glover continues to set up the station, and that'll be ready again for the Crew 2 astronauts whenever Crew 1 departs.
I wonder if they're fighting for sleeping in Crew Dragon, because I've heard that the best view is from Dragon attached to the space station.
That's true. The Russian sleep quarters have a window, so I'm sure a lot of the crew members on the AOS side are a little jealous of that. There are 4 sleep stations on each of actually the walls. They kind of look like telephone booths, but they're on the ceiling and on the floor as well. But they do not have windows, so it's just the Russian segment that has the windows, and of course the lucky one that gets to sleep in a Crew Dragon.
It sounds like we do have audio on station, so we might hear some call-outs there and some comms. Again, if you're just now joining us, what you are looking at is a view from the International Space Station as Victor Glover is getting the station ready for Crew 2's arrival. And he just floated off the screen.
And Icon 2, one clarifying question. You just reported you had the fasteners hand tight on the left side wall. Is that all of the fasteners, including the ones you couldn't get to with the tool earlier?
Negative. Of the 8, only 4 are engaged in hand tight. The 4 centered. They are not engaged at all. It's an interesting fastener that requires you to kind of loosen it. Then this wing nut catches, and then you can tighten it. And I cannot actuate it. So the 4 center ones are completely disengaged.
Okay, we copy. We're thinking we're probably going to need those engaged, but we're still talking about it, so stand by.
So what you just heard, the crew aboard the International Space Station, including Victor Glover, are now about 3 hours into their workday, having woken up just a few hours ago. Not shifting quite with the Crew 2 astronauts, who after doffing their suits will have a meal and then enter into a sleep period. Part of the reason why they are on a 23-hour trajectory. But the voices you were hearing were Victor Glover on board the International Space Station, and I believe that was the voice of Kathy Bolt, who is a Capcom over in Mission Control Houston.
And that is so cool, Gary, that we get to hear them live on the International Space Station, because it is
Dragon SpaceX for PMC.
Go ahead for PMC.
Dragon, for awareness, we can perform the PMC at any time, so if desired to perform early, just let us know.
Okay, thanks. We'll let you know.
We got some more communications with the core to the crew.
And Icon 2 with forward plan.
It's actually incredible, Jesse, to hear and see both at the same time 2 different crews on 2 different sleep schedules in space. And they'll be joining each other in space when they dock about 23 hours from now. What you heard on the Dragon side was a PMC, or a private medical conference. These are common through really any human space flight. So the private medical conference will be the first chance for...
I wanted to fit check a tool. I've got the 3/16 L wrench. It's going to be close, but it might work. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, we were going to let you know that we do need to get those fasteners at least hand tightened, and our suggestion would be to back off the seat track a little bit, get it loose, and then try and get under that seat track, and then hand tighten as best you can.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to do that. That seat track is engaged by 2 very large torque fasteners, and removing those is always a risk because they're really easy to strip in removal. I had to do it earlier today, so I think we can do that. They're engaged all the way now, so it'll be a little higher torque. But if you're okay with that risk, then I will put that in work. I've got the tools.
And Ike, to be clear, we did talk about that, but we do only want those fasteners backed off just a couple of turns, if possible.
Again, really cool to see 2...
Yeah, a couple of turns isn't going to do anything for you, so I'm going to have to almost completely remove the seat track to make a difference. So a couple of turns would essentially just like break torque, and it's a very long fastener with a lot of closely spaced threads, so a couple of turns is going to get me essentially no difference. And I have to get a tool right underneath where the C-track covers. So the plane to engage the tool into the hex head is the same plane that I engage the torque fitting to get the C-track installed. So I actually would, to make this simple, I'd have to completely remove one side of the C-track, but if I completely back them out, maybe like a 1/4 of an inch remaining, it's like 1.5 inches long fastener. So if I leave like a 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch, then I've got some access to get in there and use the L wrench.
Yeah, and Ike, we understand, and our goal is just for you to not back it out completely. So back it out as far as you need to be able to get the access you need. Copy, thumbs up.
And some communications with Victor, getting the basically the bed ready for crew 2 or one of the crew members. And you may have heard them call him Ike on the comms. They talked about this during crew 1. Ike stands for KE, which is I know everything. And so they joked about it around that time, and now I think everybody just calls him Ike.
That's right. When asked about it, he'll often say, it's a good opportunity and a reminder to keep his mouth shut. He has said that several times. So that's what they're doing on board the International Space Station now, is really just walking through the procedures of installing that new bedroom. So there's bolts, and they have to make sure that things don't strip. Things are a little bit different in space. What's nice is that Victor Glover does not have to do it alone. He's got support on the ground there at Mission Control Houston. The voice you're hearing was a Capcom, so all the different flight control support members are able to filter the information through that Capcom, who is Kathy Bolt today, up to Victor Glover as he kind of works his way through some of these procedures, which were nice and conveniently velcroed or fastened onto his hip with a little tablet. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and you could see that Velcro on his pants. Obviously, they're in space, so it's probably hard to be able to have...
SpaceX Endeavor, we're ready for the PMC.
Okay, SpaceX copies. We'll get that in work.
Some more communications with the Core to Dragon. They're getting ready to perform the PMC.
Private medical conference, that's right, and that'll be one of those checks before they go ahead and go to bed. There's a couple more things. They have their meal, and then they have a pre-sleep period, basically just kind of get situated, because again, they have a sleep period built into their rendezvous to the International Space Station. We've heard some of the communications with the Corps here on the ground mentioning that private medical conference was very flexible in terms of timing. They could have talked really any point before their sleep period, just make sure they're okay, feeling good before they head to bed for what's allotted an 8-hour sleep period.
Yeah, and they have multiple check-ins, right, for these medical check-ins to make sure that they are healthy throughout their entire mission. And they have a dedicated flight surgeon, correct, or a doctor that's dedicated to each of the crew members. So when they do this PMC, there is one for each crew member.
That's right. And they'll often staff mission control with surgeons and biomedical engineers that are able to monitor not only the health of the astronauts, but also some of the support equipment to help them maintain their health. So this includes a advanced resistive exercise device that sort of simulates weightlifting, but you don't really lift weights in zero gravity, so it sort of simulates that. It does get up to pretty intense resistance, hundreds of pounds kinds of resistance. They also have a stationary bicycle and a treadmill.
So they do get to work out in space.
They get to, and they have to. Yeah, that
Right.
actually maintain their muscle and bone density when in space. If they were to just leave it alone, you would see some deterioration in both of those. But they found out that exercising regularly, they give them about 2.5 hours every day by doing a combination of resistive exercise and aerobic exercise. It really helps to maintain that bone and muscle mass when they're in space for that long.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're looking at on your screen is, on your left-hand screen, a beautiful view of Earth. And on your right-hand screen is Victor, whom looks like he is upside down in the view, but there is no upside down or right side up in space. So he's there preparing for the Crew 2's arrival. What he's working on right now is getting one of the bedrooms ready. And he's working with the team on the ground. They are assisting him with this preparation.
The view on the left is a view of the Mediterranean Sea. The International Space Station flying about 262 statute miles right over it on a southeasterly trajectory, about to head over Egypt. That's what you see in the distance there. Now, the crew themselves have a pretty packed work day today. There's it's generally like that. Just ahead of really every day is crammed to about 5-minute increments, planned way in advance for all of the crew to perform their various experiments. As you see now, Victor Glover working on the install of the CASA, or the new bedroom of the International Space Station. In the meantime, 2 other astronauts, Commander Shannon Walker and Soichi Noguchi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, are both exercising. Shannon Walker on the stationary bicycle, and Soichi Noguchi on the advanced resistive exercise device doing some weightlifting.
We do have a couple minutes before the crew on Crew Dragon begins their meal. So we'll take some of your questions. Again, if you do have any questions, please use the hashtag LaunchAmerica. And we have a question here. Will Crew 2 have to sleep in the Crew 2 capsule?
The answer is yes, for one of the crew. So when Crew 2 arrives, they're going to bring the station population up to a whopping 11. Luckily, it will only be like that for a couple of days. There are currently 6 installed bedrooms on the International Space Station. You just saw...
from Columbus, I've got the 6-inch long 3/16 ball tip.
We are privatizing the
is going to make this possible.
surgeon on private channel.
Copy, thanks.
Yeah, and that communication, they were kind of overlapping there, but one was from Victor Glover, who is installing that 5th bedroom that I was talking about, our 7th bedroom, once because in regular crew rotation flights, so for about 6 months at a time, there's going to be 7 crew on board the International Space Station, 4 on a commercial vehicle, in this case Dragon, and then 3 on the Russian Soyuz. That is on the other end of the International Space Station, but there's accommodations for all 7 now on board. So during that couple days handover where there's 11 on board, everyone's going to have to find a different room to sleep in. So you'll have someone in the Crew Dragon Resilience, someone in Crew Dragon Endeavor, and then others will find different areas around the International Space Station. At nighttime, they do turn the lights down. They have emergency lighting just in case there was some event that were to happen, so they could find their way to the next, to a milestone or find the way around station. But really, I mean, you can strap yourself to literally any wall with a sleeping bag and call it a bedroom. It's actually nice.
And now that the crew has started their meal, let's take a look ahead to our upcoming milestones. At 5:40 a.m. Pacific time, or 12:40 UTC, Mission Control will shift change, and that is necessary because this is a 24-hour flight, so we want to make sure that our crew in Mission Control gets some sleep and some rest. That is very important for these critical missions, so we will have a shift change. Then at 4:55 a.m. Pacific time, will be the first opportunity for the crew to talk to all of you, the viewers. That'll be pretty exciting to hear from the crew on board Dragon. At 9:25 a.m. Pacific time will be dinner time for the crew. And from there, a couple hours later, they will be going to sleep at 11 a.m. Pacific time, or 1800 GMT. And hopefully be able to get a good 8 hours of rest. And during their sleep period, we are going to be bringing you a recap of today's highlights and taking a closer look at the careers of each of our crew members.
Over the last 20 years, crews aboard the space station have completed over 3,000 scientific and educational experiments, and Crew 2 is prepared to add to that growing number. Once Crew 2 arrives at the space station, they'll spend the next 6 months working in our orbital laboratory. Having 7 crew members on board, with 5 of those on the U.S. side compared to the 3 we've had for years, significantly expands the amount of research that can be conducted.
Not only will the crew be contributing to hundreds of experiments, they'll also be bringing some with them on Crew Dragon. Resupply hardware for the vascular aging study is one of those experiments. This investigation is part of a series of studies from the Canadian Space Agency looking at the effects of weightlessness on astronauts' blood vessels and hearts. Vascular aging hones in on issues known to pose risks to astronauts' health, like radiation and insulation resistance, a precursor to type 2 diabetes. Studying the responses of the cardiovascular system in space better equips us to understand how our arteries age here on Earth.
Also launching aboard Crew Dragon is hardware for an experiment called Celestial Immunity. It builds on earlier studies to evaluate how gravity affects our immune response. It uses cells from both elderly and younger adult donors to study possible age-associated effects. The investigation could uncover novel immune pathways useful for the development of new vaccines and drugs to prevent and treat existing and emerging human diseases.
Including hardware to support new science on board station, Crew Dragon is carrying more than 500 pounds of cargo today. This also includes crew supplies like clothing and shoes, cameras, lights, and spare parts and tools for spacewalking, the station's exercise devices, and life support hardware on station.
And once Dragon is ready to come home, the teams will pack several hundred pounds of cargo inside the capsule to return to teams on Earth. When Crew 1 returns as early as next week, they'll be carrying more than 260 pounds of science samples for researchers back on Earth to analyze from more than a dozen research projects. They'll also bring any old or failed parts from station systems, giving technicians on the ground a chance to analyze hardware up close and potentially refurbish and refly parts to the station. So for the latest on some of the activities happening on board the International Space Station now, in fact, the crew is undergoing a number of different things as they're just starting their day on board. Let's head over to Courtney in Houston for the latest. Courtney?
Yep, thanks, Gary. As you guys just mentioned, the crew is awake aboard the station, preparing to welcome the Crew 2 astronauts tomorrow. On docking day, NASA's Victor Glover will be primed for monitoring Dragon for its final approach and will take the lead on hatch operations. And back here in Mission Control Houston, the Orbit 1 team is still on console, being led by Flight Director Paul Kanya. The flight controllers are in the middle of a shift handover, so Flight Director Adi Boulos will be leading the next shift of flight controllers. Several hours before crew boarded Dragon, the space station did their own go, no-go poll. There are several key systems we have to ensure are functioning properly before NASA can give their go for launch. And everything is still looking good on the station side for Dragon's arrival, so let's head back to Hawthorne for the latest on what's next for Dragon.
All right, over the next 22 hours, Dragon will execute a series of burns, which will gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the station. We've completed the first of our 5 major burns, the phase burn, that will bring the spacecraft close to station before we begin final approach maneuvers.
The next burn, which is based on what our orbital data shows us, is the boost burn, which raises Dragon's orbit until its orbit reaches an altitude just 10 kilometers lower than the space station. Followed soon after by the close co-elliptic burn to place Dragon on an orbit roughly co-elliptic with the space station. Now, this means that the crew will be about 10 kilometers lower than the station during their entire orbit around the Earth. The fourth maneuver is the transfer burn, where we're raising Dragon's apogee, or highest point of its orbit, to just 2.5 kilometers below station. Then we round everything out with a final co-elliptic burn to once again maintain a constant orbit beneath station, this time just 2.5 kilometers below.
Then we'll get into the approach initiation and final stages of Dragon's rendezvous with the space station. This is also when we start integrated operations between the Dragon control team here in Hawthorne and the space station flight controllers in Mission Control Houston. The teams will transition to integrated operations roughly 45 minutes prior to approach initiation. During the approach, SpaceX flight controllers will work in tandem with the NASA team in Houston to activate and test out a number of systems on Dragon, including bidirectional communications with the station using the C2V2 system, which stands for Common Communications for Visiting Vehicles, and sets up a data stream from Dragon to the station, giving another path for Dragon telemetry to come to the ground and giving an additional command capability to astronauts aboard the station. They'll also maneuver Dragon to the proper attitude and initialize the navigation sensors used for the methodical approach to the station.
Tomorrow at approximately 12:40 a.m. Pacific Time, or 7:40 GMT, Draco thrusters on Dragon will fire for the approach initiation burn when Dragon is about 2.5 kilometers below station and just about 7 kilometers behind it. This will swing Dragon up until it's about 400 meters directly below the station. This maneuver will also move Dragon inside one of the 2 safety zones around the station that requires a set of go-no-go pulls with the different control teams. The first zone is called the approach ellipsoid, which is an imaginary shape measuring 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers, essentially a large 3-dimensional oval. Before Dragon is given permission to move inside this ellipsoid, referred to by the teams as the AE, it is configured to be on what is known as a 24-hour safe trajectory. This means that if Dragon lost all control to its thrusters, it would be at least 24 hours before its orbital path would take it inside the approach ellipsoid.
Once Dragon arrives at 400 meters below the station, it will be at waypoint 0, which is the first checkpoint during our approach. The vehicle can hold at 400 meters or continue on if all systems check out to approach to waypoint 1. By this point, the teams will do a go, no-go poll for Dragon to move inside the keep-out sphere, another zone that consists of an imaginary sphere around the station with a radius of 200 meters.
Dragon SpaceX 4 status update.
Go ahead.
And Dragon, we're working on some troubleshooting here regarding the privatization of the channel. Just wanted to check in with you because we've been out of comm for a little bit. If you're willing to stand by, we can still get that PMC in work.
Okay, we have nothing to report, so it's up to you.
Okay, we copy. We will still attempt this PMC and keep you updated on next steps.
Copy that.
Okay, so what you just heard from Core Chad Healy here in Mission Control Hawthorne, some status on the Dragon itself as they were in a loss of signal period with Dragon's orbit. That will be coming up soon. So we were describing Dragon's approach to the International Space Station with the Dragon making its way inside the keep-out sphere. Now, once it makes its way inside, it's another chance to confirm all of the guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly on Dragon before moving closer to the station. And it carries a requirement similar to the AE that Dragon's orbital trajectory would not bring it inside the sphere if control was lost, but this time only for 4 orbits, or about 6 hours instead of 24 hours.
Dragon's move from waypoint 0 to waypoint 1 will swing it up and out in front of the station, pausing at a distance of approximately 220 meters. At this point, it will be on what we call the docking axis, which essentially means it is directly in front of the docking port. The crew is headed to the forwardmost port on the International Space Station, which is the Node 2 forward port. That is where Dragon docked for both of our demonstration missions as well as Crew 1 last November. For those following along, Resilience, the Dragon spacecraft used for Crew 1, recently moved from the forward port to the space-facing port on the Harmony module in order to make room for the arrival of Crew 2. Harmony, or Node 2, is where both the international docking adapters are located. These were installed for new commercial spacecraft flights and any other future spacecraft that also uses the international docking standard.
Now, once Dragon is only 20 meters away at waypoint 2, the spacecraft focuses on aligning its docking system with the docking adapter. Dragon will then fly in and make contact with the docking adapter, giving us what we call a soft capture. The soft capture ring then retracts until sensors indicate it's time